What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, Jim to my right, Ryan across from us. Gentlemen, good to see you. Haven't seen you all week.
Hello, Mark.
It's good to see you, Mark.
I missed you.
I missed you too, Mark.
We missed you as well.
On the table, why do I feel like there was not a level of authenticity there? On the table, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Jim, and also if you're just listening auditorily. Jim, what do we got here?
We'll try to.
This is one of our gun highlights.
For those folks, we'll try to paint a verbal picture. This is a Ruger LC Charger. It is a pistol, by technicalities, and it is chambered in none other than the 5.7 by 28. So it's kind of a neat little gun. It's another one of those MP7s we have at home type deals. Now, actually, this was purchased prior to my full understanding of what Palmetto State Armory is coming out with, which is that it's a full-on basically MP57, I think, or something like that. I can't remember what they call it.
Very clever putting the the other integer in there.
I don't think, though, that's exactly what they call it. They call it something else, and I'm completely blanking on it. Someone's going to drop it in the comments for us. They have something that's coming out that looks very, very cool. I'm interested. I think I signed up for a thing online to say that I'm interested even, and I never do that.
Wow.
But for the time being, this is fulfilling the role. I've been enamored with the 5.7.
I was going to say, speaking of the role, why did you want this? Yeah.
I've been enamored with the 5.7 for a long time.
Why?
And
why?
I just think it's really neat. I think it's... Well, Ryan, we've talked about the 5.7. And, natural comparisons come up between the 5.7, the 22 WMR.
Ridiculous.
Which isn't a good comparison. But then I think that people just jump from there immediately to like 5.7 versus 5.56.
It's also ridiculous.
Which isn't quite a right comparison either.
Yeah.
It's like, I'd say it's ridiculous, but like when I look at this or think about it, it's kind of like a baby 5.56.
I mean, like visually speaking, when you look at the cartridge, you can see maybe some, yeah.
It has shoulders.
I guess where I'm going, shoulders, bullet grain weight, and similarities there, at least I think. You're looking at, 40 to 62 or something like that, kind of what you'll generally find.
I would say that the 62 thing is a new venture,
okay,
which is wonderfully exciting.
But also, like, compared to a 9, increased velocity.
Yep.
So you're kind of trading bullet weight for velocity, just not to the scale of a 5.56. I'm not saying it's like, an apples to apples or anything like that. But I can see how people might.
A few very, very significant things have happened since the last time we talked in a professional capacity about 5.7 by 28. Big one, NATO adoption.
Yep.
It's a NATO cartridge.
Yay.
And then...
and hopefully that will make it a little bit more available and a little bit more affordable. That's been the big rub with 5.7 for a long time, is it's very expensive to get. Anyway.
And then, as of about 2 years ago, perhaps, the American manufacturing marketplace has started ramping up introductions of 5.7 by 28 chamberings in pistols and, similar types of guns to this.
Well, yeah, you have your handguns, then you have your, we'll almost call them like a
PDW.
Like a PDW style pistol,
yeah,
or a pistol that was loosely based upon a carbine,
yes,
or something like that. I don't even know what to call it, but they're pistols. And so anyway, this one I thought was really neat. I wanted to have something that I would toss in the truck or toss in a UTV or whatever it is, and then be ready to dispatch vermin of various types around the farm. And that led to a lot of different potential options. Of course, you could just use an AR, which is the utility knife or the Leatherman of the gun world. But, I was like, well, naturally it has to be a little bit different. It has to be a little bit weird because me. And then that led to, a number of different, it was the same thing with like 22 LRs. It's like, as much as I love those, it also wasn't different or unique enough. And I was wondering too, like, well, okay, I want to shoot a coyote at 200 yards. I'm not going to do that with a 22 LR. Just
not effectively.
it's not
No.
me. So that's kind of what, in a lot of ways. Now, of course, when they came out with this, they didn't come out with the intention of varmint hunting and dispatching things around your farm. They came out with it as a PDW cartridge, and I think that it does that job wonderfully, and it always has. And then I think people try to make it do other things, and then they complain about it, and they're just complaining about it not being able to necessarily do the things it wasn't even designed to do, as well as other things that were designed to do those things. So, and like I said, I just always wanted to get a 5.7 just to see what it was all about. And it is lovely. And out of this firearm, it is lovely. So to describe it for you, because it's been dressed up a little bit, if you've seen pictures of the Ruger LC Charger, you know it has that Picatinny rail at the back instead of a stock. And so on the Picatinny rail, I have clamped an A3 tactical pistol brace, so keeping the pistol designation. And then out front, I have affixed a Surefire suppressor. That is one of their SOCOM suppressors. It's actually a 5.56 can, but 5.7 fits right down the pipe just fine. And I've got a war comp on there that it attaches onto. Got a little Surefire. I guess I'm a big Surefire fanboy suddenly out on the front end of this gun. I got a Surefire flashlight on the right side of the gun with a pressure pad on the top. I don't know if that's just because I think I'm super cool when I have those, or, but at night it's nice to have a little bit of light. And then on top of the gun, we have a UH-1 Gen 2 holographic sight with a Micro 3X magnifier. And it is a ton of fun to shoot this thing. I mean, you just hold dead on all the way out to 200 yards. There is absolutely no recoil to speak of. Zero recoil. It is outside, I would say. Of course, we have an indoor range here, and it's zipping quick enough that you'll be uncomfortable shooting it without ear pro on inside. But outside, no need for ears. I'm shooting the VMAX loading. That's what this is, correct. What grain weight is this? I don't have the box with me.
40.
I'm shooting the 40 VMAX. It's been said to be quite a violent little thing when shot into soft tissue. So that was the choice. Golly, it shoots beautifully too. It does everything that you would need or want it to do. The bullets go where you're aiming and where you think they should go. So I haven't had any issues with it. I haven't had any reliability things. I've enjoyed shooting it. That's that. I do have a few ergonomic woes that I could complain about with this thing, and maybe I'll do that. Shall I? The charging handle is on, it comes on the left side. Now, it is reversible. You can go in and dissect your firearm and then put it on the other side. And, they do that, the main intention being for other-handed shooters. I kept it on the left side, so I'm a right-handed shooter, right-eye dominant, which is funny because I do like everything else left-handed except for writing. But I kept it on the side that it's on because I think that it's easiest to get to. I have considered off and on a number of times moving it over to the right side of the gun because when you get this pistol, it's shortened. So it has a shorter barrel, therefore it has a shorter handguard. And I think that these two things go hand in hand. The charging handle would be in an okay location if the handguard was a little bit longer. The handguard comes, you'll see it, and I noticed it online before I bought it, and I was just kind of like, all right, we're just going to see what happens when this thing shows up. I think that they lawyered up this handguard a little bit at Ruger, or it got lawyered up, because the barrel length, the barrel sticks out like an awkward 2.5 inches, maybe 2 inches or so from the end of the handguard, and almost seemingly unnecessarily so. You can even see now with the suppressor on, which obviously goes over the muzzle device, which then covers up a little bit of the end of the barrel. Even with the suppressor on, there's like an 1.5 inch long gap between the end of the handguard and the beginning of the suppressor. So that's just an extra little bit of real estate, like 1 finger wide, that would be nice to be able to have a purchase on with your support hand.
We're catching a little bit of mid-2000s AR vibes.
Yeah, that is that's very correct. Now my thought is that someone at Ruger in the legal department was like, we need to have that gap there so that people are aware of where the end of the handguard is, and it needs to be some distance away from the end of the barrel so that if they don't have a muzzle device or a suppressor on it and they're just shooting it with a thread protector, they don't shoot their finger off if it goes just a little bit in front of the handguard. So that is what it is. They have to do what they've got to do, but it's annoying. And I would like, man, if this thing were just like an inch longer, it would make a world of difference for where I could place my support hand, and then I wouldn't be having the meaty part of the underside of my thumb.
I see that
of my
now.
palm running into that charging handle. There's actually like a really specific, annoyingly specific spot where you can have your hand and not have it run into the charging handle and not have it falling off of the end of the handguard. And if you're off by that, like just a hair, then you're either, like I said, you've got your finger off the end of the handguard or you've got your palm in the charging handle. So my thought was what I may opt to do is might try to do a little 3D printing action. Maybe 3D print up a new handguard because I haven't seen a whole lot out there that I like aftermarket-wise, and maybe that will start to pick up in due time. There is one that says it does like an MP7 style handguard, and it only comes out on the bottom, but then it angles back, which I think is meeting an aesthetic that they were going for, but it's not meeting the function that I would like, and so I would just literally like this to just extend.
Sure.
So possibly some sort of a 3D printing thing of a new handguard, or waiting to see what the aftermarket comes out with. That's one thing that I would like to do. The other one is this charging handle sits in like a sliding, it's like a guide rod almost of sorts that allows it to slide back and forth in this pocket and keep it from wobbling around. They have the charging handle up in the front part of this, so that puts the charging handle forward towards the very end of the receiver, towards the barrel end of the receiver. I go back and forth on this. If it was rearward, see what I'm saying? If it was back here closer to the trigger guard, then your charging hand would be well out of the way. You could put your hand anywhere. There's a lot of real estate up here. Even just as part of the receiver, there's a lot of real estate up here that you could enjoy using your support hand on. And then the charging hand will be further back here. It wouldn't affect functionality. The only thing that it could affect is, I don't really care a whole lot about, like, people are always like, does it shoot with the pistol brace or the stock folded? And, people make a big deal about that. I don't care a lot because I'm like, you have the brace or the stock for a reason. Like, use it. Why are people out there doing this? But if you had that charging handle rearward on the back portion of that, then if you did want to ever charge it with that brace folded, you'd be running into it a little bit. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can charge this now with the brace folded just fine. Those are my only little quibbles with the gun. I'm okay with the manual safety. It's not too annoying. It's in a pretty ergonomic location, very similar to an AR. I never really use the bolt hold open a whole lot. I mean, occasionally just for clearing stuff, but it doesn't bother me where it is. So those are the only things. That's kind of a little rundown. But golly, is it compact and nice to carry around. It shoots wonders. It's quiet enough. Like,
for how you're using it, it seems like just a fantastic solution.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the gun. I don't have a sling on it. It has QD sling swivel cup in the rear of the receiver, which is nice. But the way that this thing rides around, I'm not slinging it up. It's just mostly riding around in a truck or on a floorboard or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like how the mags. Obviously it's a pistol, but I like how the mags go into the grip. I like how the mags load.
Yeah,
they load like an AR mag.
Oh yeah, so these are 20-round mags. Now somebody said on a number of different online sources, a couple people were saying, oh yeah, the Palmetto mags for their 5.7 Rock pistol fit and work in this gun. I got a few of the 5.7 Rock magazines because they were less expensive and they hold slightly more rounds. I think it's like 22 or 23 rounds, more than the Ruger mag. But they are a very sloppy fit. I would not recommend that to people. I found, and I tried multiple different 5.7 Rock magazines from Palmetto. That's not a slight on them and their gun or their magazines at all. They didn't design those magazines to fit in Ruger's gun. It doesn't work. And then the Ruger mags also aren't a reverse fit into the Palmetto gun. So I would just stick with the Ruger mags. And there are a few people who are making extensions now. I have a few on order. I haven't seen them yet. But, extensions would be nice because more ammo is never a bad thing in your gun.
You know what I think is neat?
Oh, the magazine release.
Yeah.
Button or lever or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So it sweeps down as opposed to pushing in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be deliberate about that.
Yep.
So you're not going to unintentionally.
Oh, sure. Just with some pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's nice because the 5.7 guns, if you're a smaller handed shooter, 5.7, because of the nature of the length of the cartridge, they usually have a longer grip. Even if it's narrower side to side, they're a little bit longer front to back. And so you'd have to break your grip quite a bit if you have smaller hands to push in a button like you would have on a Glock pistol or an M&P or a lot of pistols. But with this being that sweep down little, I call it like a lever, or, it's a lever, a button, or a switch or something like that.
Switch.
Or you flip that down in order to release the magazine. That is pretty nice. That is a ergonomic plus, I will say, for Ruger on this one.
It's pretty cool. Of the available styles that are out there similar to it, well, there's not a ton in the long pistol carbine PDW format. Other guns that we had talked about would be like a P90, which
I don't like holding them.
Ergonomically, you are in exactly two camps, either no or yes. And some folks just detest them.
It's the P90 is too, and it's so cool, and I appreciate so much what went into it.
Yeah.
But I don't like shooting like this unless I have to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so, like, when you're out, if you're on a farm, like, you don't have to be like this, pulling it out of a suit jacket. It can just be on a floorboard, so I just didn't need that.
And the P90's magazine location is bizarre. It's on the top.
It is neat, though, and you can hold 50.
That's true.
Okay, that's a plus.
You load it under what I'll call the optics bridge, where the optic is mounted forward. So you kind of, now the magazine's long. The P90 magazine's, north of a foot. And so you slide it into place and then it pops down, feeds from top down, ejects out the bottom.
Like, if you weren't paying attention, you might accidentally stick the AR magazine vice block in the P90 instead of the magazine itself because they look a lot alike.
Yeah. Your controls here are great hybridization of pistol in the conventional like grip, and then carbine in the otherwise conventional layout. So it's a pretty cool little package. And back on 5.7 by 28 ammo, before it was like 29 grain to 40 grain on the top end, and now that palette has diversified considerably. You can get subsonic 5.7 by 28, which is really interesting.
Very.
And when you look at that on paper, you're like, well, that's 22 LR, right? Because it's a 60 grain bullet at 1,050 feet per second. But it's not. It's not 22 LR. It's a lot more bullet mass and a lot more bullet integrity at a subsonic velocity that functions. So, which is a big thing, right?
Yes, it is.
And these are twisted to accommodate that projectile weight length. And then if you look at like an analog to 223 or 5.56 subsonic, very challenging to do with any reliability out of a semi-auto, and I don't know that there is necessarily. And then to load that, if you are going to hand load it, because we're working with such a diminished powder charge in a relatively large case compared to that powder charge, functionality is questionable at best. Whereas the small interior cartridge dimensions of the 5.7 by 28 lends itself useful to doing a subsonic loading. And so now the shooter has a pretty incredible palette of, Mark, what are you looking for, sir?
I was just going to compare it to a 5.56, but
here.
All I have are these
AR-10 Max stuff full of 308 behind you.
Yeah. So very, very different cartridge, right?
Very much.
But there's a lot of really cool options out there in 5.7 by 28 right now, and it's getting better every quarter.
It's funny how that cartridge worked because it came out long ago.
Long ago. Child of the 80s.
I mean, it just took it a really long time. And you wonder how much of this is just trends and fads, and people were kind of sick of what was out there, and they're like, well, let's look around for something new. And in this case, they got something new got to be something that was actually old and just never really caught a lot of steam.
The pendulum, it swings.
What's interesting there, though, I feel like oftentimes when that happens, if a cartridge comes out and it's a dud, and then they generally just die.
Yeah.
Yeah, but where I'm going with this, sometimes a company comes out with something that's essentially the same thing as the original. It's just repackaged and the timing is right.
Yeah, that is true. And I think the thing with the 5.7 was that, I mean, this is all just like guessing in a lot of ways, but it seems like they came out with it for a very specific purpose, and it did that well. And they sold it to the people who needed it for that purpose, and that was it. And if you wanted to buy one, commercially, whatever, go for it. But finding ammo is going to be a little bit tougher. You won't going to see it on your typical store shelf, and it's going to be expensive. And they were like, just deal with it. If you want it, then you can get it. And it took just a long time for, all it was waiting for was just some manufacturers to be like, okay, we'll jump into.
Yep.
Which happened now because you have Ruger getting into it, Palmetto getting into it. A couple of other honorable mentions. I was looking at the CMMG. They have a couple of different uppers that can shoot this. But I guess like I said, I was wanting to be a little bit different. I just didn't want to have another AR. And then, there's stuff that's like that goofy AR upper that takes the P90 mags. I looked into that as well. I just, I wanted it to be a little shorter.
Sure.
But you can't because of the dimensions of the magazine. And, so like a few more people are coming out. Smith & Wesson came out with a 5.7 pistol. And if they don't already have like a carbine or like a big pistol type deal like this, I'm sure they will soon. Keltec has their 5.7 stuff. So people are starting to do it, and then the ammo manufacturers, I think, are jumping on a little bit more. Of course, now it has NATO adoption, so I think that's only going to further bolster its popularity. And, I'm excited. I hope more people get it and enjoy it, because when you use it the way that it was, that it's intended to, as is the case kind of with any cartridge, you can have a lot of fun with it, and it can be really great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds like a really nice blend of performance and then like pleasantness to shoot. Like you said, like it's got
so nice.
Such little recoil. Now I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, like about 30% less than like a 9mm. Which that's significant.
Well,
it feels like you're shooting.
What?
It feels like you're shooting. What do we have? It's not Simunitions. That's a brand, but basically the same thing.
Yeah,
it feels like you're shooting Sims
Mm-hmm.
out of one of those Sim ARs that you use in the shoot house. And those things, I mean, you can just rip off rounds and you just feel silly about it because there's no recoil. The reticle isn't jumping at all. I mean, you can just like hose.
Yep,
that's what it feels like.
I watched Mark shoot a bear with a sim gun.
Yes, you did.
It was awesome.
Way to go.
People took exception to my trigger press, Ryan.
That was the whole point. It was supposed to be silly.
I mean, I know, but people don't get that.
Mark,
Sometimes.
don't
There's
let
a lot of
them.
people who don't understand silly.
You don't worry about that.
I can't.
It's not a big deal.
You see what you did to Mark, everybody?
You broke him.
We have
just a gentle soul like that, and you just went and said
I will
things
say,
about him.
Now that since we're on the subject of the comments,
It was a
I'd
cardboard bear.
Oh.
And they're upset about you shooting a cardboard bear with a simunition gun.
I would say I don't want to focus on the negative here.
Okay.
Even though that's what I started.
All right.
So I recognize that that's what I did here.
Do that.
And I don't say this enough. Overwhelmingly, the comments are always like so positive and nice and like informative, beneficial. And then there's a few stickers in there.
One or two.
They're just hard not to. It's your brother talks about it. Critics math. You could have 100 like nice comments, and then somebody says something bad, and you're like, oh, that's the one that I'm going to remember.
It's true.
It's true. It's hard not to do.
It's
that.
very true.
Anyway, so
We actually look at the comments.
Back on 5.7 by 28. Have you been saving your brass, Jim? Are we going to reload this?
I have been saving my brass. I'd like to reload. I don't know. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I would like to reload.
What would be the benefits of reloading? Just
cost of operation.
Pretty much.
Okay.
It is on the spicier side of price to run
Mm-hmm.
when you compare it to things like 9mm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understand 9mm has been around for a very long time as a commercially viable cartridge. This is relatively new. And actually, we really get to thinking about it. Less powder. Well, a comparable powder. Less bullet material.
Mm-hmm.
The cases for a long time were a challenge to produce. When I loaded 5.7/28 for a very short stint, this was very long ago, it was a very challenging cartridge to load. And
we've heard that from a couple of people in the reloading scene.
Yeah, and as I understand it, this is becoming much easier to work with now.
Yeah.
And I think it was the way brass was produced for 5.7/28 at one time versus how brass is produced for 5.7/28 now. So really darling little cartridge. Big thing when people start comparing it to other things, we have to look at it in the context of use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it does afford you something over a 9mm in a similar platform, whether that's a handgun, a PDW, or a full-on carbine.
Yeah.
And it has range and trajectory and velocity.
And lack of recoil.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
That's something to talk about because I've had blowback operated 9mm firearms like this, whether you call them, whether it was in pistol or carbine fashion. And they're just a little bit, they're thumpy.
They're abrupt.
That's the only way that I can describe it is thumpy. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't buck, it doesn't, kick. Any of these terms that people use that describe something that's like sharp and almost painful.
Sure.
But they're just thumpy and the gun moves a fair amount. And, it almost seems just sort of like a lazy, like ogre of like an operation.
Yeah.
And this is a blowback operated 5.7, but because of the nature of the cartridge, it's still just, I can't imagine like CMMG has those radial delayed setups and all that stuff. I can't imagine what shooting one of those is like even compared to this, because with this, like I said, you pull the trigger, you hear a noise, steel rings, like things happen, but as far as, not recoil, it's not happening. Your reticle that you're watching is not moving. You can just shoot again. And that is really, I think, one of the exceptional things about shooting any of these guns chambered in 5.7. And it makes a lot of sense then, like the P90 chambered in 5.7 with a magazine of 50 rounds, and I'm sure when you get one of those things in full auto mode, they shoot pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
It makes sense. You're not having a lot of muzzle rise. That's probably, I haven't done it, but I can imagine that's got to be one of the easiest to control full auto bursts out there. And considering the people who are carrying it and the environments in which they would be in while shooting, it makes sense that you'd want something that's easy to control.
Can I, not to continue to make this a 10 plus 4 minute talk.
That is what it is.
You mentioned MP7 that we have at home.
Mm.
Everybody is fascinated with the MP7.
Everybody is.
And
I would love to know what people who actually shoot MP7s have to say about it.
I've talked to a couple people that have used them in a professional capacity.
Yeah.
The statement I felt most significant was it was very handy in a car. And there was very little remark beyond that.
Yeah.
So for many years, I've often seen people championing for a civilian market MP7. So full package, 4.6 by 33, the whole shebang. And HK just doesn't do it. And so this, we'll just call it like a subreddit of the MP7 that we have at home has come out. And I think that this is unquestionably the best example of the MP7 that we have at home.
Right now, when Topol Metal comes out with everything. And this is like, I brought up the CMMG, which I really thought was slick.
Yep.
Again, maybe it wasn't weird enough for me, but piecing that whole gun together was going to put me well north of $1,000.
Yep.
This setup, of course, I put things on it. So we're not going to have our whole 1,000 yards for less than $1,000 debate with any of these commenters. You talk about annoying commenters. Anyway, but the base gun itself, well south of $1,000. I think this is like a between $600 and $700 gun. Which is like, when you consider everything that you get, I tacked bits on, but like...
You could play less than that.
You could. Yeah. You could. You get a Crossfire red dot, stick that on top. You don't need the magnifier necessarily. I just have it for those 200-yard shots. And, of course, I like shooting suppressed. So, we add in the cost of the suppressor, but I switch it around between guns. So, you do stuff like that, and, you can play around with this for probably right around, after you package out, you put a brace on it, right around $1,000.
Yep.
So that's Nice.
And I think it's a better cartridge than 4.6.
I don't know anything about 4.6, but 5.7 almost just seems in my head like just a bigger version of. I don't know.
Kind of, yeah. You know, it's
they were both developed for the same thing.
Yep, PDW. What I hope happens is Anschutz in Germany made hunting rifles in 4.6 by 33.
That's cute.
It is. They came with 14-inch barrels, so we couldn't really get them in the U.S. I hope somebody listening, CZ, decides to make us a bolt gun in 5.7 by 28.
Okay, yes. That is something that I was looking for a long time, and I think some people have
they monkeyed
done it with
yeah.
a lot of monkeying. It's not like your average guy just kind of like pulling parts together and putting it together. These are people who kind of know how to mess with a lot of things. A 5.7 bolt gun with like a 12 to 14-inch barrel, 10 to 14-inch barrel, and a can on the end of it, just a svelte little thing, that would replace this in the truck.
Really?
Just for the sheer sake of it just being like, oh, there's a raccoon over there or whatever. Let me just pull this little dainty number out. And people would be like, oh, is that your 22? And it'd be like, just
kind
wait.
of.
And then you watch a raccoon turn into just fur.
Reduced to fur. I hope that happens.
I like the volume.
Well, this is true, but there's something pleasurable about it being a bolt gun.
Yeah, there is.
It
like,
does,
you know, when you get those
as
little 22 bolt guns and you just go like with the bolt, and then you just like it's nice.
It sounds very svelte.
Yeah, and I like svelte.
I think
But it'd be even quieter too.
if it was possible, a CZ600 in one of like the trail or alpha configurations.
Ooh, yeah. Speaking
Hello.
my language.
Hello.
Speaking my language.
I'd even take a Lux just because it looks really sharp.
Hell, I'd go back for seconds.
It would make an exceptional varminting cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to hunt bobcats, gray fox, red fox, coyotes over a call. It would work on things like pigs with the right projectile in a pinch, moderate distances. I think it would be darling.
When we really do ramp up our coon hunting this year,
Jim's going to have more on the scoreboard than we will.
Jim's going to be ready.
He's gonna have like an ox yoke just
full of coons.
Raccoons hanging off of it.
I was just looking at the. I keep looking at the. We're talking about the case.
Yeah.
And just like the case head, it's like the primer almost takes up like a comically large
funny.
percentage of the real estate there.
It is funny. Didn't we have a conversation about large versus small rifle primers and things like that? And then you look at this thing, and the primer is, I mean, they have like just enough of a rim for the extractor and whatever it is to grab onto, but otherwise it's just primer.
It's wonderful, James. It really is.
I really like it. It's a cool rig, man.
Appreciate it.
Anything else?
No, other than I was just going to say I may do a few edits to it, but that will be barring either me learning how to use a 3D printer or finding someone who does and who has an affinity for firearms, which there are many. Yeah.
It'd be fun to throw this thing on a chronograph, use geoballistics to create a drop chart, shoot it out to say 4, 5.
We should put a little 1 to 6 on top.
Yep.
That'd be nice.
That would be fun.
Yep.
Let's do that.
Things you can't do with your 22 WMR.
Ooh. We'll put that on our list of things that we need to follow up on.
It's getting longer.
It's getting
by
longer.
the way.
It's getting longer. But contrary to popular belief, we actually do also have jobs here too. So that's part of the reason why it gets slowed up.
These things take time, but they generally work themselves out in the end.
If anybody makes a bigger mag extension, the last I checked, I think 5 rounds was the biggest, and there were plans for 10 and maybe even more round extensions. I ordered some from a source long ago, and I just realized when I got here that they still haven't showed up. I'm hoping they'll show up soon. But that'd be neat.
Cool, man. Jim, appreciate you bringing this thing in.
You bet.
Let's go out.
It's not mine, actually. I've been talking like it's mine.
Yeah.
It's a buzz.
Yeah. Let's go out to the farm and do some pest control.
Love it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. What do you think about the 5.7 by 28? Is it cool? Do you need one? Do you have one? What have you done to mod yours? Like, dislikes? Is it the future? Let us know in the comments below. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everybody.